Hi, welcome to the Peace and Love podcast. This is your host, Siva speaking. I haven't recorded in a minute, but I've been working on things, changing my life. For example, I have a new recording set up. Can you hear the difference? I got the fancy mic that Thomas Miller recommended, and it's taken me a minute to kind of figure it out and figure out how to record on the computer. I was doing it on my phone before, actually. So now I'm here, and hopefully the audio sounds better. Today I'm going to talk about a lot, share some big exciting news, and how I brought myself to that point so that you can too. I did a lot of subconscious reprogramming, specifically about my fears about death, and that's kind of what brought up this change, so I can't wait to share. If you've been listening for a while, I think in a couple of podcasts, I said I was working on something big, I had something big to share, but I can't share it yet, and finally, I have some resolve on it. I was planning the whole time some extravagant move to some place. I was thinking Costa Rica. I was thinking Bali. I was really thinking I'm okay with anywhere that has a beach. I'm landlocked right now. So I wanted to do that for months now. I mean, when I first mentioned that on the podcast, that was probably literally months ago. But there was just something stopping me. I was just afraid. But now, today I'm here to share, I got a one-way ticket to Bali. Woo! Oh my goodness. I got up today and I looked in the mirror and I said, did I actually do that yesterday? Was that just a dream? Did I actually do that? So I really wanted to share what got me to that point where I could even buy the ticket because, like I said, I've been wanting to do this for months. I still have some objections coming up, but I know how to deal with them. I mean, that's what life is all about. You're going to have things that you really want to do. It's always the thing that's like so thrilling, that's so scary. So you always are going to have that. And the more that you do and grow, the things that scare you are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you'll overcome that and there will be something bigger. So it's really just knowing how to deal with the objections and the energy whenever it comes up, right? There's really not much that freaks me out in this way. Or at least I don't find those parts of me so easily. Like the last time I kind of felt this amount of energy was the first time I was doing karaoke. I was like, I've never sang in front of a group of strangers. And I did feel that energy, but as soon as it was over, it didn't scare me. And then the next time I did karaoke, I was really excited and I had a lot of fun with it. Not sure how overcoming karaoke turns into overcoming solo traveling fears, but I guess it does. So the reason I am so excitable about this is because I've never traveled alone. I've taken one flight home alone, and that's it. So I've definitely have room to grow in that area. There was a series of events that occurred for this to unfold, and I really want to get into that. In life, I love and I personally recommend everyone speak with someone who has gone before you, overcame the things, knows your obstacles, knows how to help you overcome them, right? So I always like to keep around a good coach. So one of the things that my coach and I were talking about led to, hey, it looks like maybe there would be a fear of death here because we were talking about something completely unrelated to death, yet subconsciously it was linked back and there was a huge charge there, a huge feeling. The whole helpful part of having a coach is that they know what to do when you don't know what to do. So he gave me an assignment, and the assignment had to do with overcoming the fear of death via looking into beliefs and changing them. It's actually a worksheet, compliments of my favorite author, Frederick Dodson. And at the top, you write what you'd no longer like to experience. Then you write what one might believe to experience that. Then you kind of change the beliefs by making them a little more neutral and then a little more positive, yet still believable. Because you can't just completely change your belief over sharply into something that you just don't believe, period. So I did that. And it brought up a lot from the depths of my subconscious. In the middle of doing that, I was like, I think I want to buy a plane ticket right now. One way, specifically. But I was focused on the assignment. So I told myself, well, let's finish this worksheet and then we can take a look at buying a plane ticket. Because I'm going to Hawaii in the next month, and the thought had never occurred to me, but on that day it occurred to me, I wonder what Hawaii is close to, and I wonder if I could get a flight from Hawaii to Bali. Never had that thought before, but it came up and I couldn't really ignore that. And so I looked, and in my mind, it looks about halfway there. So I'm thinking perfect. But I'm working on my assignment, and I do most of it because it turns into a huge thing for me. So I didn't finish it in one day. And I went to bed that night. And I've also been reading an amazing book called Conversations with God. The premise of the book is that this man gets into a habit of writing letters whenever he's upset. So he'll write a letter to that person, never send it. And one day he had lost his job, his life's falling apart, and he decides, okay, I know exactly who I'm angry at. I'm going to write a scathing letter to God. And then when he finished his letter, it seemed like magically his hands started moving. So he starts automatic writing these conversations with God. I know it sounds crazy, but if you listen to the book, it's so moving deeply. I've cried several times listening to the book. In the spiritual field, you do have to be so discerning about what you're listening to and is this of the highest good. And one way to know that is by listening to what they're saying and what results that would produce. And most importantly, how it feels. You know you're dealing with something that's high energy when it's deeply inspirational and deeply loving. Something that brings tears to your eyes. Something that makes you feel blissful. That is something that is of a higher quality by nature. Where I'm getting at, though, is from listening to this book, it's deeply drilled into my conscious and subconscious that I can have my own conversations with God, the universe, source, the highest of all, whatever you want to call it, just on my own accord whenever I feel like it. And everyone can do it. It's not this big thing. So that night I did end up having a conversation with God on my own. This was the first time that this has really happened where I'm asking questions and I really feel like I'm receiving an answer from the field and it's downloading, whatever you want to call it. I'm getting these downloads and it's coming in crystal clear. I asked a lot of questions and I got a lot of answers. And one of those answers was go to Bali. And I can't argue with God. I know this sounds ridiculous, probably to a lot of people, but when you know, you know. I have trouble explaining a lot of my experiences to people because A, I don't know how to put it to English, and B, I don't think that most people would resonate. But at night when I go to sleep a lot, I do have, and whenever, I'm meditating, it's not having to do with going to bed, but whenever I meditate, close my eyes, really go within for a long time, I can experience these profound feelings like, I don't know what to call it, like feelings of unconditional love, feeling as bright as the sun, feeling like this big white light, loving everything, like everything that you hear God describing of. On a weekly basis, I feel that way temporarily, which I know that doesn't sound normal if you don't experience that, but to people who do experience that sometimes, it makes sense. My one friend calls it getting really high. Yes, you can get high on your own supply. Some people do it with breath work, but for me, what works is when I sit down, I'll feel emotions that come up. Something's coming up, and then I sit with the emotion for long enough, and it's a process of letting go and shedding these layers of yourself. And if you go into it looking for like a high like that, it's not really going to happen because you can't experience something like that and hold desire at the same time, if that makes sense. But when you are able to fully release, fully let go, experiences like that happen because that is the non-resistance, the non-desire part of self. The part that just is, the part that just always has been, it is the true nature of ourselves. So whenever people doubt whatever I'm saying or They doubt spirituality, doubt fear, all of that. It's like, yeah, but I've seen it. Yeah, but I lived it. The first time that ever happened to me, I was maybe 15, 16. And I would say that really fueled my spiritual journey because I was like, what just happened? Like, out of all my good times combined, it still wouldn't have felt as good as I felt for 1 minute back there. So I'm like, what happened? And it really sent me on a journey to figure out really what the hell happened there. More like what the heaven happened. Sorry, dad joke. But it really does feel like a piece of heaven. And I'm not trying to make it sound like these things happen in an instant, even though they kind of do happen in an instant. But, I'll be sitting there for an hour, or like I don't keep track of the time, you know what I mean? So it has happened where I open my eyes and I've been gone for 3 hours or something. The best way I could describe it is getting back to our true nature of self. The emotions, these pockets of low energy, are really what keep us from experiencing life like that all the time. There's people who walk around like that all the time. I've met them, and you know that it's them when you get in their presence and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm glowing just because you're glowing. You just see how the world responds to them, and you see their light on their face and in their eyes. I don't know exactly how they got there because I'm not that, but I think it's just doing the work consistently until you create that experience and you stay within that experience, right? They're habitually at these high levels of consciousness that I get glimpses of every so often. But anyways, so whenever an emotion comes up, if you fully allow that emotion to just be there, feel it, it'll probably get 10 times worse when you feel it. It'll probably feel like someone's stabbing you in the heart or in the stomach, wherever you're feeling it. And then if you just sit there while it feels terrible, it will dissipate. And then after you let go is when you have these experiences of just being and non-resisting. There's probably hundreds of books written about this. It's not something I came up with. But to name a couple, there's Letting Go, and then there's Untethered Soul. Untethered Soul is really what brought me to be doing emotional work like this. And that's when I started having these higher consciousness experiences more often. Anyways, all of that to say, I know it sounds weird if you haven't experienced it, but it's experienceable to anybody, having conversations with God, having these moments of perfect clarity where everything makes sense and you feel one with everything. It's all possible for everyone because that's where we all come from. If anything, it's more unnatural to be, really angry all the time or really shameful all the time. These are like extremely far away from what we really are. Not to say that that's bad though. I mean, there are infinite games that one could play. It would be interesting to play all the games, don't you think? I mean, just experiencing coming and living as a person and then coming back to love and light would be boring. I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of experiencing all of the universe. Some of these more angsty places of being, that's like an expression of God as well, because everything is all that it is, you know what I mean? So if you are experiencing lower emotions, no one is wrong for that. It's all an experience. And the best part about it is that we have free will to choose. So if you don't like what you're experiencing, go ahead and change it. So another thing that came up when I was having my conversation with God was about decisions. I can be somewhat of an indecisive person if you haven't learned this through my months of deciding, should I go, should I not go? I'm scared to go, I'm scared to not go. So I hear a lot about billionaires, and what everyone says is they make decisions in 0.001 seconds. They have a decision ready instantly, basically. And most importantly, they stick with their decision. It takes them a long time to change their decision if they've already made up their mind. So at the opposite end of that spectrum, you see people who take forever to make a simple decision, and then they change their mind all the time. You've already made a decision and you're trying to change your mind, which is kind of how I can tend to be towards that end of the spectrum. And so I asked, how do people do that, where they just make a decision and they stick with it? Because in my mind, I know that investors, those type of people, they are intuitive. So I'm like, do they just know more than me? Are they just like that? And the answer was no, they do not know more of the future than you. They just have much more faith. And I'm like, excuse me, what? They have more faith than me? And it's like, well, to get to this highest point of like, a company, you've made a lot of decisions over a lot of periods of time. And at that point, you've exercised that faith muscle of, I make a decision, I have faith, it goes my way. I make a decision, I have faith, it goes my way. Until you're making decisions that really impact a lot of people and it doesn't feel so severe. These people have really strengthened that faith muscle. So the answer was, they listen to the question, they receive the question, they feel it out, they pick what feels best. So there is that intuitive key of it. They pick what feels best. And then they have faith that it's going to work out. And they have so much faith that it's going to work out that they don't waver in their choice often because they are waiting for the outcome that they expected. And for me, this is a breakthrough because I can be like that a lot. Like sometimes I'll go to a restaurant and I'm terrified I'm going to make the wrong choice at dinner. So I can't even imagine, you know what I mean, making choices for tons of people, for an entire company, for your children. Those are decisions that in the moment they could feel big. So for me, learning how to just exercise that faith muscle and not change my mind at the first possible crossroad or take forever to make a decision because I'm scared is kind of key, because the fear can interfere with a lot when it does come up. And I think the main reason that I was able to book the ticket was because I had just worked on my beliefs about death and somehow they were correlated. The last part of that assignment was, if you believed all of these new beliefs that you've created, how would you act? And I wrote down a lot, but I did have a few main takeaways. You know that old question, it goes something like, what do you say to a rich man to make him sad and a poor man to make him happy? And you tell them, this too shall pass. My big takeaway from this was circumstance, situations, experiences, they come and they go. But what's real and what's always there is the you, the I am, the experiencer, the observer, whatever you want to call it. I am always experiencing whatever is happening. It's kind of almost silly to get attached or resist what's happening because it's a temporary experience. The best thing that you can do is be an engaged, non-attached player. I mean, I'm not saying don't be attached, be apathetic. I'm saying it's temporary what we experience here and the small term, like from day to day, and it's temporary what we experience here from the day we're living and then the day that we go on to another journey. But don't you think if the one constant through all of our experience on life, through all the roller coaster, all the up and downs, you have always been observing, you have always been the experiencer. I'm pretty sure, as above, so below, that one would be experiencing continuously. Because behind the fear of death is the fear of non-existence. And I learned something about that too. I used to hear people always talk about the space in between things and the space. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? You must be spaced out. But I finally got it through this process. It's like everything that is, so that creates a polarity of isn't, but nothing is still something when something is. Even though I just became the person I said was spaced out and didn't make sense, it still makes sense to me. And by my own logic, I had an understanding that even if something were to not exist, it would still exist because non-existing is still existing if there's a polarity between what is and what isn't. To make this more digestible, it's like if we believe our true nature is whole source, why did it get all fragmented? So if everything started off as one eternal God, right? then there had to have been a polarity of God and God not, or something that is not, to create an experience of God experiencing itself. Because there would have to be something else for God to experience that was not his self or herself. You know what I mean? So you can just keep breaking consciousness up into little itty bitty pieces, I feel like. Like we're just a piece of consciousness, a wave in the ocean. So in order for something to not exist, I'm not even sure that it's possible. Because think about it. If you like broke up a little chip in Earth, like a chip, and you get all these little tiny pieces, right? Okay, the chip still is there, it's just in pieces. And then say the chip decomposes. Well, then it's part of the dirt in something else. And then the dirt becomes part of something else. I mean, you could take it so far. You could literally shred everything up to the molecule. I don't know if that's even possible, but say it is. It would still exist just in a different form. I'm not sure that not existing is a possibility after you exist. Kind of like we know energy can't be created or destroyed. It can just be transmuted. Hopefully that somewhat illustrates what I'm saying, because there is a deeper fear behind death that most people don't realize unless they look into it. All of that being said, I feel like this process, my whole life, and everything that has occurred in between, has just brought me closer to source, closer to truth. I might not be all of the way there yet, but I do feel like I'm closer. It's actually pretty funny. Every time that I actually think that I know something, I learn later that I didn't know that. It's not true. And I know nothing. I feel like this happens because I find higher and higher versions of the truth. And I've heard that the universe is infinite, so I don't think that this is ever going to stop. So stay tuned to keep on learning in this infinite universe. Siva signing out. Peace and love at ya.